Hello everyone, welcome back to the Lingua Loom. Today we're going to start another episode of the Tracing the Critic series, which is Longinus on the Sublime. Well, this is the work on the Sublime, the first theory of what makes literature genuinely great, not merely correct but overwhelming. So this is what this topic is about. Author is Pseudo-Longinus. Well, the correct author is unknown in this regard. So before starting the series, please do like, subscribe and share and comment as it means a lot for the channel. So let's start with section 1, the text and the authorship problem. The treatise Peri hypothesis, which is on the Sublime or on Sublimity, survived in a single 10th century manuscript, first printed in 1554. Its heading reads by Dionysius Longinus. The table of content of the same manuscript reads by Dionysius or Longinus, the single word or open 2 millennia of scholarly dispute. The scholarly consensus today, confirmed by Britannica and Wikipedia, is that the true author is unknown. Well, this is the fact about this work, which makes it even more interesting that there is no such knowing about who actually the author is. The conventional name is Pseudo-Longinus. The text is dated to the 1st century CE, not the 3rd century, as one was once assumed, because it responds directly to the work of a Sicilian rhetorician of the 1st century. This data is widely accepted. We will use Longinus as a conventional label, not a historical claim, as we don't know who the real author is, as it is unknown. So for this work, Longinus is mostly used, so we will be using this. So the text is also incomplete. About 1/3 of the manuscript is lost, including large portion of the discussion of the second source of sublimity. What we have is substantial but fragmentary document, a letter addressed to a cultural Roman friend named Postumus Terentius. Well, these are as Greek names, so they're quite difficult to pronounce, but we'll try our best. So common misconception is that many textbooks and courses still call the author Longinus and date the work to the 3rd century CE, associating it with Cassius Longinus, the philosopher and tutor of Queen Zenobia of Palmyra. This attribution is now rejected by mainstream scholarship. The correct position is that author is unknown and work is from 1st century CE. Conventionally, the name used is Pseudo-Longinus. So let's start to the next part, which is what is the sublime? Longinus defines sublimity, well, this is written in ancient Greek, as the echo of greatness of spirit, a loftiness and excellence in language that does not merely persuade or please, but overwhelm the readers, lifting the soul out of itself. Crucially, sublimity is not a feature of style alone. It originates in the moral and imaginative power of the writer, in the quality of the mind behind the work. This is the first time in the Western critical tradition that literary greatness is attributed to an inner quality of the writer rather than the technique or rule following. So this is from the book Sublimity is the echo of a great soul. So the word hypsos literally means height or elevation. For Longinus, it describes a quality of language that produces specific experience in the reader, a flash of overpowering recognition, a sense of being struck and lifted simultaneously. He is not categorizing poetic devices, he is describing an effect in consciousness. This is a legal departure from both Plato and Aristotle. Plato asked, is poetry epistemically legitimate? Aristotle asked that what are the formal elements of a well-made tragedy? Longinus asks something entirely different, which is what makes a reader feel that a piece of writing is great. He is the first critic to place the reader's experience at the center of literary analysis. So let's move forward. The five sources of sublimity. From Hyphasis, chapter 8, Longinus lists five sources stating that all five depend on prior condition, command of language. The first two are natural gifts, the last three are acquired through art. So let's look at them each one at a time. Grandeur of Thought, which is the first one, natural gift, the capacity to conceive great and noble and lofty ideas. Longinus links this directly to greatness of soul, not just to subject matter, but to the scale of mind the writer brings to any subject. This is the most important source. Longinus argues that a writer cannot produce sublime writing without first being, in some sense, a great person, someone whose habitual thinking is large, noble, and serious. A small mind cannot produce large thought. So here primary example is Homer, particularly passage describing the swift stride of the gods across vast distances. So this is what Longinus is saying, that great minds, only great mind can produce great knowledge and great works. It is gift, natural gift. It is not something that you acquire by learning something. Then vehement and inspired emotion. The capacity to feel intensely and to transmit that intensity. Not all emotion produce sublimity. Forced, theatrical, or manipulative emotion produce what Longinus calls misplaced passion, the opposite of the sublime. Only genuine, deep, fault emotion, authentic passion gives writing its irresistible, breathtaking energy. Longinus writes that nothing contributes to greatness as much as noble passion in the right place. So he said that emotions should be genuine when writing something or when talking about something, because fake emotions cannot produce that much of greatness. And it is natural gift too. Then comes the third figure of thought and speech. Rhetorical and poetical figures, question, apostrophe, ascenditon, hyperbaton, anaphora, deployed with skills and purpose. Longinus devotes more text to the source than any other. His key insight is that figures are not ornaments struck into the otherwise complete text. When used well, figures and the sublime mutually support each other. By a sort of natural law, figures bring support to the sublime, and on the parts drive support in turn from its wonderful degree. So this is what he said, that figure of speeches, they should be used beautifully in the text, so a text can reach a certain level of sublimity. Then comes noble diction. Noble diction is precise, dignified choice of words, including the use of metaphor and other ornaments of expression. Longinus subdivides this into proper choice of words and the use of metaphors and ornaments. He is sensitive to a different degree between elevated word choice and mere archaism or affectation. So noble diction is not fancy word, it is a word chosen to carry the weight of the thought and emotion behind them. A simple word perfectly placed can produce more sublimity than an elaborated circumlocution. So this is what he said, that the writing should be beautifully presented. It should not, he said the text should be real, and it should be not only always having fancy words. Even simple words can create genuine and authentic work. Then comes dignified and elevated composition. A harmonious arrangement of words, clauses, and rhythm in the whole that builds towards climax. Longinus calls this source that embraces all those preceding. The structural compositional dimension of sublimity that holds everything else together. He is sensitive to rhythm, sentence structure, and the way clauses accumulate toward a moment of overwhelming intensity. So this is what he said, that every arrangement should be proper, so the text should be perfect in its sense. So these are the five sources of sublimity as given by Longinus. That command on language is very important to create something natural and beautiful. Now let's look at the next part. Okay. Nature versus art. The central tension. One of the Longinus post-predictive arguments concerns the relative contribution of innate genius versus acquired skills to sublimity. So let's look at them. First, the source, then natural or acquired, then implications for writer. First one, the grandeur of thought. Nature endowment cannot be fully taught, which is the writer must cultivate moral and imaginative greatness of soul, not just technique. And vehement emotion, natural endowment cannot be fully taught. Or authentic passion cannot be manufactured, forced emotion produce bombast. Figures of thought and speech acquired through art and training. Rhetorical education matter, figures amplify genuine sublimity when used with skill. A noble diction acquired through art and training. Word choice can be refined, reading widely and deeply expand one's lexical range. And dignified composition acquired through art and training. Structural skill building through climax, managing rhythm is a learnable craft. So this is what he said, that what is the difference between center, which is the source of central tension between natural and art. So Longinus does not resolve the tension so much as it holds productively. Great writing requires both a natural gift of a large mind and genuine emotion and the trained skill of diction and composition. Neither alone is sufficient. A brilliant mind with no craft produces raw energy that cannot sustain itself. Technically, a perfect writer with no greatness of soul produces merely competent and forgettable work. This tension will reappear throughout the history of criticism, in romantic debates about genius versus rule, in the modernist quarrel between inspiration and technique, and in contemporary discussion of authentic voice versus writerly craft. And let's move forward, which is section number 5, what the sublime does to a reader. Longinus described the effect of sublimity with precision. They're distinct from the effects of beauty or mere persuasion. Effect 1 is ecstasy, being taken out of oneness. Sublime does not produce or please, it overwhelms. Longinus used the Greek word, this is the Greek word, aplexios, a stunning or striking of the reader out of ordinary consciousness. So, super summaries takes the reader out of himself. Then the second effect is irresistibility, which is no room for deliberation. Persuasion can be resisted, the sublime cannot. It strikes before the intellect can evaluate it. This is why Longinus argues the sublime is superior to mere eloquence. Eloquence reasons with us, sublime overrides reason momentarily. And fact number 3 is elevation of the soul. The reader's soul is lifted temporarily, raised to the level of the greatness of the mind that produces that work. The reader feels, however, briefly that they share in the author's greatness of spirit or largeness of spirit. This elevation is both aesthetic and moral. Then fact number 4 is the test, recognition of the defect. Longinus offers a practical test for the sublime. A passage is sublime if, on rereading, it continues to strike with the same force. Merely clever or pleasing writing fades on familiarity. Truly great writing grows strongly with repeated encounter. So this is what sublime is, which is something great, something grandeur. So these are the facts that are created by sublime. Then false counterfeits of the sublime. Longinus is the least interested in failed sublimity as its successful sublimity. He identifies 3 main faults that arises when writer aims for greatness but misses them. These are not failures of competence, they are failure of judgment, each of which is corruption of one of the sources of sublime. So let's look at these 3. First one is bombast, which is inflated thought. The most common fault, language that is inflated beyond what is subject to thought can support. The writer reaches a grandeur but overshoot, producing not elevation but empty noise. So this is what he said, that it is the most common fault of the verb which makes something less sublime, reaching to the level of no sublimity at all and failure of the work. Then come puerility, which is childish pedantry, the opposite of bombast, writing that is precious over refined academic schoolroom cleverness mistaken for depth. The writer produces thought that are technically accomplished but small in scale and spirit. It is the fault of too much art without natural grandeur. Well, this is said that in this stage, there is too much art but less natural interest in the work. Then comes the third one, which is parenthesis, false or misplaced passion, emotional excess applied in the wrong place or theatrical emotion that is not genuinely felt, which causes the failure of sublimity. So let's look forward that these are the three. Remember them that these are the three faults that causes the failure in sublimity. Then comes Genesis example are critical first. One of the most discussed moments in the entire treatise is Longinus' citation of the book of Genesis as example of sublime. At chapter 9, alongside Homer and Demosthenes, he cursed the line from Genesis, which is, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light." This is historically remarked for two reasons. First, it is almost certainly the first citation of the Hebrew text in the Greek work of literary criticism. Second, Longinus cites it not for theological reasons but for literary ones, as demonstration of sublimity through the technique of extreme brevity and abrupt power. The vast creative act compressed in a single command, the gap between the command and its instant fulfillment. For Longinus, the sublime. You can pronounce it Longinus or Longinus, up to you. So likewise, the lawgiver of the few, not ordinary man, having formed a worthy conception of divine power, expressed it as he felt it when he wrote at the very beginning of his laws. God said, "What? Let there be light, and there was light." Well, this is the lines from the book that are translated in the English language. Remember this, not always every translation is accurate because you cannot translate one word of a language accurately into another language. So the lawgivers of the Jews is Moses, whether Longinus has direct access to the Hebrew Bible or Greek translation is debated and cannot be confirmed. What is confirmed is that citation appear in the treatise alongside Homer, Sappho, Plato, Demosthenes, and others. Longinus draws on approximately 50 authors spanning 1,000 years as examples. His criticism is generally cross-cultural in his evidence base. For your audience, the Genesis citation is worth pausing on while it shares Longinus operating outside the Greek or Roman canon. While he showed different sort of examples, so this shows the diversity of his work. That's what makes it text sublime. Then comes the legacy why Longinus still matters. First, recovery and immediate influence. The treatise was largely unknown until Nicolas Boileau's French translation in 1674 brought it to the attention of European literary culture and made the sublime a central category of neoclassical aesthetics. From that point forward, its influence was rapid and wide. Then comes the second point, which is the romantic sublime. Edmund Burke's A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideal of the Sublime and Beautiful, written in 1757, and Immanuel Kant's Analysis of the Sublime in the Critic of Judgment, written in 1790, both engage directly or indirectly with Longinus' foundational concept, that is, thought that transforms it significantly. Burke locates the sublime in terror and vast, Kant in the confrontation between human reason and natural infinity. Neither is simply Longinus, but Longinus made the conversation possible. Super summary, therefore confirmed Burke's work as an explicit imitation inspired by Longinus. The rest scroll to see better. Then the third point is reader response and effect. Longinus insistence on the effect of literature on the reader, not just its formal properties, made him a precursor of reader response criticism and the fact theory in contemporary literary studies. He is the first critic to ask systematically that what does this do to us? This means that any written work. Then the last point is the writer's inner life. His argument that greatness of writing depends on the greatness of soul, that literary quality is inseparable from moral and imaginative character, and displays romantic expressivism. Matthew Arnold's criterion of high seriousness and contemporary discussion of writing, the ethics and authenticity. It is a line of thought that runs from the 1st century CE to the present. So these are the legacy of Longinus, that what makes a work great. And the key terms, let's look at them. First one, hypsis, which is sublimity or height, the central concept of the treatise, literally height or elevation. For Longinus, it names the quality of language that overwhelms, elevates, and transforms the reader, originally in the greatness of writer's soul. Then comes eclipsis, which is immediate experiential effect of the sublime on the reader, a sudden stunning and striking that bypasses deliberative reason, distinct from persuasion and pleasure. It is about overwhelming. Then come typhus, which is bombast, the most common counterfeit of the sublime, inflated, swollen language that exceeds its concept. The writer reaches for grandeur but produces emptiness. Bombast has an external shape of the sublime without its internal source. And the next term is parenthesis, which is misplaced passion, theatrical or excessive emotion deployed without genuine feeling or in an inappropriate context. The counterfeit of its source it is that it looks like passion but lacks authenticity. The reader recognizes it as a performative and is repulsed rather than moved. So this is the pronunciation, which is parenthesis. Parenthesis. You can break down a word and learn its pronunciation. Like you can take the part. This is parenthesis. Then perihypsos, which is On the Sublime. The full title of the treatise is Peri, which is concerning, and hypsos of sublimity or of height. The Latin equivalent used in some scholarly contexts is de sublimitate. The treatise is also referred to as On Great Writing in the group translation. Well, it depends on the translation, as original work is not in English, so it is hard to describe what is actually the real pronunciation or what is actually the real translation. And these are the references from where the work has been taken. You can pause the video and check out this work if you want to read something in detail. Okay, I've scrolled them slowly for you to just have a glimpse at them. Well, that's it for today. I hope you understand it. Please do like, subscribe and share. It means a lot for the channel. So a very short summary about this work is that this work On the Sublime, which is something about the greatness of a literature or literary work, is on the greatness. Sublime means something grandeur, written by Longinus. Well, this is the name given to the writer, as the real author name is unknown. So this is the deciding name, not a historical name actually. So this is all the work is about, that any text can be great if it follows certain sort of patterns like natural and odd features to make something great. A writer should always focus on emotions, read language, and have a great grasp on language, but not too much flowery or fancy language, as it can cause a failure of sublimity. Text should be genuine so that it can reach the audience or the reader. This is what this is about, the greatness of the text, what makes text great. That's it for today. I hope you understand it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.